Why is online information so confusing? Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're feeling unfulfilled and unhappy, but nothing's really going on in your life that would cause you to feel that way. So you're confused and you start Googling, you search on YouTube, and you may fall into one or two rabbit holes. Either it's all alignment, higher self, frequencies, raise your vibration, and crystals, and you're like, what the hell does that even mean? Or you end up on the other side and it's all nervous system regulation, vagus nerve, somatic practices, and it sounds like a medical textbook that you're not even qualified to read. And worst of all, none of it actually helps you feel better. So today I'm going to show you how spirituality and science, they're actually talking about the same thing, they're just using different words. And more importantly, what that means for why you may be feeling stuck, disconnected, or unfulfilled in your life. And I'm not teaching this as someone who just knows. I spent the majority of my life in survival mode. So I spent much of my 30s with these misguided attempts to research things and quote unquote fix things. So I did the spiritual bypassing, which means that you're seeking that love and light feeling without really doing any of the inner work. So I wasn't changing any of my beliefs or my habits. So it felt good in the moment, but then I was living my life the same, so nothing changed. And I also read a ton of self-help books. And they're nice because they're full of a lot of information, but they're written for the masses. So when I finished, it was unclear how to implement the information in my own life, because each of us has our own life with nuances and specific circumstances. So when these books are written for everybody, it's sometimes unclear how to actually implement that in our day-to-day life. So it's information, but then you don't have the practical side to it. And I also did the therapy, which was also something that felt good in the moment and also gave me information. But a lot of times I left, same problem with the self-help books, I left not knowing how to implement it in my life. And the disclaimer to this is I only went to 2 or 3 therapists. And in hindsight, I think the issue was they were not good therapists. I'm not saying all therapists are bad. That was just my personal experience with therapy. I think there are good therapists out there, but that was my experience with therapy. But my point is, I finally invested in myself and I hired a coach and I worked with him for several years. And then I became a coach myself. Oh, and by the way, if you're new here, I am Angie, the Inner Glow Coach, and I help women stop chasing love and approval and learn how to radiate it from within. So from being coached and hiring a coach, I've learned how to translate these terms into something that actually changes how you live and how you trust yourself, and that is how you shine from the inside. So here is why you feel crazy. Because spiritual spaces tell you to align, but they never tell you what to do when your body feels unsafe. And then science explains the nervous system, but they never explain how to actually live from who you really are with meaning, truth, and self-trust. So you may bounce between the two like I did for years. And again, I spent the majority of my 30s doing this. So if you have or are doing this, there is totally no shame. And also, if you're new here, anything that I talk about, trust me, I have been through. So I'm always speaking through a lens of empathy and compassion. But anyways, like me, you may be bouncing or have bounced between the spiritual and the science. So you meditate, you regulate, you journal, you intellectualize, and you still feel stuck. And it's not because you're doing anything wrong, it's because no one is actually translating what any of this means for you in real life. So let me break some of it down. When spiritual people say alignment, science calls that a regulated nervous system. And what that means in everyday terms is that when you accept yourself for who you are and feel safe and comfortable in your own body, and that means you're aligned with your authentic self, and it means your nervous system is regulated, causing you to feel safe and comfortable in your own body because the primal part of you is not sensing any danger outside of you. And when the spiritual community says low vibration, science may call that chronic stress, survival patterns, and emotional suppression. And what that means in everyday terms is that you're in survival mode, living in outdated behavioral strategies, meaning that when you were a child or teenager under the care of caregivers, which are usually your parents, but it could be other caregivers, you learn these behavioral strategies like people pleasing or perfectionism because they help make you feel safe in that environment. But then as an adult, those are no longer working for you because you're a fully autonomous adult. So using those same strategies in adulthood may be causing you more pain than safety. So again, spirituality calls that low vibration and science may call that stress, but what it really means is that you're living in an outdated pattern. And the good news is you can change that. So as you can see, they're describing the same experience, but one is poetic, and I would go as far to say ungrounded, and one is clinical and possibly too grounded. And they both become useless when they're disconnected from how you're actually making decisions in your life and living your life. So spirituality without grounding just turns into dissociation and seeking that love and light feeling. And then science without meaning just turns into numbness. And again, I mentioned in the beginning, it may feel like you're like reading a textbook, because I remember in college, like some of my textbooks, because I was a finance major, so I had to take science courses, and like some of my science textbooks, it was like reading another language. So this is why, in my opinion, neither spirituality or science work effectively on their own. And so the truth is, you are not unfulfilled in your life. You are dysregulated and you're calling it a life problem. And this is the part that might offend some people, because I think some people feel like they're lacking purpose, but what they're really lacking is emotional safety. And you can't feel fulfilled when your body is constantly bracing for rejection, conflict, or abandonment. Or the everyday term for this is waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because trust me, I used to live my life like this. How many other people listening live their life in this state of, if something good is happening or even something bad, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And you can't access your intuition, which, by the way, is the key to self-trust, whether you believe in spirituality or science. But you can't access your intuition when your nervous system is stuck in that survival mode. So you may think to yourself, I need motivation, I need purpose. No, you need to stop abandoning yourself, because fulfillment is not something you find outside of yourself. It's something that organically becomes available when your body stops thinking it's under attack. And self-abandonment is the real block that everyone keeps dancing around through the spiritual and science speak. And both science and spirituality point to this, but nobody says it clearly. Again, my opinion. Because, again, you learned early on as a child and teenager that being yourself didn't feel safe, because we're all born with this light inside of us. If you see kids, they are running around, they are screaming, they do not give a F. But it usually starts in our family systems. It definitely evolves into school and society systems. But these things outside of us tell us how we should or should not be, and we start conforming to things outside of ourselves, and it disconnects us from that light, which is who we really are. So when we're learning these social cues that being ourselves doesn't feel safe, we start conforming to that, and getting our energy and identity starts getting drawn in things outside of ourselves. So then we start managing other people's moods. We edit and filter ourselves so that we're not too much. We may over-explain ourselves. We may procrastinate because people pleasing is a nervous system response. Overthinking is a lack of internal safety because you are scared to death of uncertainty. And waiting to feel ready is a survival strategy because you don't trust yourself. And these are all primal forms of self-protection. And nothing is wrong with you. Your body is actually trying to protect you. The difference is we are not cave people. We are adults, and we can and should be in control of our emotional and physical safety. And I say this all of the time, your emotional and physical safety should always be your number one priority in life. And when it is, then your nervous system doesn't have to worry about it as much. So when your nervous system is in that primal state and on all of the time, it feels a lot like being stuck. So here is the reframe that will change a lot for many of you. You don't heal by thinking your way out of survival. You heal by building that self-trust in your body. And I could talk for 2 hours on this, so I'm just going to give you some very simple examples that you can start implementing in your day-to-day life. And so self-trust, this means saying no instead of saying yes when you want to say no, which I have a People Pleaser to Powerhouse Masterclass, and I have a whole playlist on here about people pleasing. This is one simple thing, and it's not simple because it is hard, but it's one thing that I highly recommend implementing in your day-to-day life to help regulate your nervous system, trust yourself, and feel safe in your own body. So self-trust means saying no instead of saying yes when you want to say no. It means making decisions without external permission, meaning you're not asking everybody else for their opinion, you're not waiting for the sign from the universe or checking what the planets are doing before you make a decision because you don't trust yourself. And I'm not knocking any of those things because you can ask people for their advice, you can check your horoscope, but all of that, anything outside of you, should be filtered through a lens of discernment, which is so easy to do when you trust yourself, because nobody knows you better than you. And when you trust yourself, your self-sourced trust is so solid that you don't even need anything outside of yourself. And self-trust also means choosing what's best for you when it feels uncomfortable because other people disagree. Because trust me, other people will always be disagreeing with what you're doing. And again, who cares? Because only you know what's best for you. So learning to feel safe in your body when other people are disagreeing with what you're doing with your life is, trust me, it'll change your entire life. So my point is, fulfillment isn't about becoming more enlightened. It's about becoming happy with who you are as a person, trusting yourself, caring about how you're showing up in life, being in integrity with yourself and your values, and not caring about what anybody else thinks about it, because you know that nobody else knows you as well as you do, and you trust and respect yourself enough to make the appropriate decisions about your own life. And even if you make a mistake, because you will, you trust that you will recover and learn and grow from it. So my point with all of this is, if you keep waiting to feel safe before you choose yourself, you're going to stay exactly where you are. Safety is built after self-loyalty, not before it. And that's not spiritual, it's not scientific. This is what it's called to be an adult. So here's the obvious next question. Where did your nervous system learn this pattern in the first place? In my next video, I'm breaking down how narcissistic and emotionally immature parents wire people for self-abandonment, approval addiction, chronic dissatisfaction, and even when your life looks fine or you're checking off all the right boxes on the outside. Because once you understand where this started, you stop blaming yourself and you finally know what actually needs to change. Just to be clear, you are not broken and you don't need to fix who you are. You just need to remember who you were before your light was dimmed. So let's turn your light back on.